what our first two new deck lists are going to be this week on VSL. Hello and welcome to round one. Rich Shay is on Grixis Pyromancer. Very good deck that's been doing well in Magic Online daily events for quite a while. Very similar, I assume, to the deck I ran in the last trimester. Kai is on the deck you've been playing a lot of on Magic Online, Jeskai Mentor. This should be a nice interactive blue-on-blue battle.
Yeah, I like the way these play out quite a bit. And even though Kai had to mulligan, his 6-card hand is quite good here.
Yeah, a couple of missteps. This is the matchup where that card is at its best. He can preordain to find a presumably he needs a fetch land to turn his plow on. But yeah, hand should play fine.
It's kind of interesting here. So I normally do not misstep.
I was going to ask.
But when you have double misstep, it gets a lot more appealing, especially if you think you're playing against something like Cabal Therapy, which Rich may or may not be playing.
It's a good point. With two missteps, I think you are supposed to misstep the probe, especially given how much Cabal Therapy is running around nowadays.
Yeah, see, and it looks like he didn't. I think.
Oh. Okay.
And one danger of not misstepping is that now that your opponent knows you have double misstep, I mean, you can't play around misstep all that easily, but it does give them time to not run out their 1-drops if they don't need to. So. But Kai's hand's still looking pretty good because he can still misstep this Cabal Therapy if Rich chooses to play it.
Right, which he will. He's got nothing else to do with turn one.
Yeah, Kai's going to get a 0-mana play out of this. The only reason not to play the Cabal Therapy here, one reason I think it's worth considering doing so, is that if you keep it in your hand, you can play Pyromancer Therapy on turn 3 and get a trigger off of the Pyromancer. So there's a chance that Rich might have wanted to wait to get a little extra value, but...
Oh. Kai with the Mentors and Pyromancers teaming up together. Now, is this... You like I said, I've seen you playing a lot of Jeskai Mentor. Is this what you think is the best version? Because I've also seen you play Esper Mentor. What's the best shell right now, in your opinion?
I think, in general, the Jeskai deck's a little bit better than the black versions because I like Pyroblast and Dakfaden more than I like Cabal Therapy. But it's close enough that it's more of a metagame call. If you're playing Blue Mirrors... Cabal Therapy is good, but so is Pyroblast, and I like that red offers the extra Pyromancers. One of the cards I haven't been that impressed with is actually Baleful Strix. It's a good card, but it just feels too low impact. So yeah, I would rather just play more of the Pyromancers and Mentors.
I think Baleful Strix has crept in because of the Eldrazi decks. This deck is very vulnerable to Reality Smasher in particular, and even Thought-Knot Seer. So if it wasn't for the rise of Eldrazi in Vintage, I don't think people would have started messing around with Baleful Strix.
Oh, well, that was a good draw.
Wow. I mean, he's got to slog through a misstep. Is the only
but Rich can go something like play a Baleful Strix this turn and just pass, and then next turn go Pyromancer, Flashback Therapy with Baleful Strix, get a token, and then Ancestral off of the, after clearing out the misstep. So Kai needs to find another misstep pretty quickly here.
And you go Baleful Strix here, not Young Pyro, because you saw the plow.
Rich knows about the Swords to Plowshares, so it's a bit of a risk if he plays the Pyromancer. Plus, if you play the Baleful Strix first, you actually get to draw another card to find your own misstep, which would be really good, or even Force of Will. I think Rich is very far ahead this game. The fact that he's a favorite to resolve 2 Ancestrals just means he's going to be able to bury Kai pretty quickly.
Ah, the Snuff Out. Speaking of ways to kill Eldrazi. Yeah, that card has impressed. I've been, like I said, I've been playing a lot of the Strixes. That's what I played last set. Snuff Out is good. Way more impressive than Baleful Strix.
Because had Rich not drawn that, then Kai's play of Pyromancer Probe would have looked pretty good, because then when the misstep battle happens, at least Kai ends up with a bunch of tokens. Now, Kai's going to play Pyromancer. He's going to Probe, and then Rich is presumably going to snuff out the Pyromancer in response. So drawing a 0-mana kill spell is really good.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, Rich's last 2 draws of Ancestral Snuff Out were exactly what needs to win this game. Though I think he was already a little bit ahead before then, because he was a pretty good chance of resolving a Treasure Cruise. But yeah, drawing those as backup is pretty important. Though Rich actually might wait on Snuff Out, now that I think about it, in order to play his own Pyromancer and cast Snuff Out afterwards. So it's whether he thinks
Interesting.
Kai's going to play more spells than him. I guess Kai's unlikely to play another Gitaxian Probe here. Kai sees the bad news, and it's going to be tough.
Yeah, you make a good point though. He can Snuff Out, he can untap, play the Young Pyro, then cast the Snuff Out. It's the same thing unless Kai has the ability to trigger his Pyromancer more often right now. Which he has Gush, but he can always respond to the Snuff Out with Gush, so might as well wait. I think you're right. And that's the line Rich is going with as well.
So Kai needs to do something like
Max punished.
And
the immediate Gitaxian Probe.
So I talked with Kai, before he ended up submitting, because he's playing the deck that I was just jamming in daily events, and he asked me about what his list would look like, and he's like, I think I'm going to put 2 Gitaxian Probes in. I'm like, sure. So he's actually just playing the 2 probes. I don't think he's playing a third.
That's fun.
But it's not going to save him though. This turn is going to be really, really good for Rich. I mean, Kai knows about all these cards, so Kai has to decide. Like, if Kai's gushing, now would be a good time to gush.
Yeah, he really wants to Force of Will this Young Pyro. I think you have to gush and cross your fingers that you hit Force of Will. Because it is bad news. He doesn't even have
yeah, it's just so brutal gushing when you're not using the mana. But I think you're right. I think if you're gonna want to gush to try to have some semblance of a good turn here, like finding another misstep or a Force of Will. And if you don't do that, I mean, when the Pyromancer's on the stack, you're gonna give Rich more tokens here.
Right. It's not like he even has access to white mana right now to plow the Young Pyro. And if it hits the table, it immediately creates tokens off of Snuff Out and Ancestral and Cabal Therapy.
So Kai has information. He doesn't. I mean, Rich drew a land that actually he played. So Kai knows everything in Rich's hand now. He knows that Rich is going to go Flashback Therapy, cast Ancestral, cast Snuff Out. And Kai doesn't hit any free spells.
Nope, land Flusterstorm. At least it's white mana.
Of course, he has to Snuff Out first, so Kai doesn't get a token off the misstep, and now Kai's going to be behind on board, behind on cards, and also have no lands in play, which is like not a great place to play from.
He sacks the token rather than the Baleful Strix. I don't know if that's relevant to Delve, but probably doesn't matter. Flying is mildly relevant.
Strix gets to fly in and get a point in.
It's true. Got to send a message.
Kai could not counter this, but then Rich could just name the mental misstep. So Kai's losing 2 life, and the upside is the downside is that Kai has to reveal his hand. So presumably this is going to be better.
Here's the Ancestral into the misstep, so the therapy is going to resolve anyway.
Well, it could. Rich knows about the Swords to Plowshares. It's the only card he knows right now, plus the 2 lands.
Yeah.
So he couldn't have just missed up the swords. He could just let the therapy not resolve here.
I was about to say that I would want the information, but he also drew Gitaxian Probe, so he's going to get to see Kai's hand either way.
Yeah, as it turns out.
I would have misstepped. You know you're going to hit with therapy, but I just like that information.
Rich chose not to cast the probe here, but it's pretty irrelevant. Like, I wouldn't even be surprised if Kai scooped to Swords to Plowshares here.
Well,
to mental misstep rather. I mean, he's not just dead, but the fact that the Rich is going to get to cast Cruise and then probe and get 2 more tokens is pretty huge.
Yeah, kind of not actually scooping, but I mean, I guess if he top decks, Ancestral into a Cruise of his own, can imagine him getting back into this game. It's just
I think most of Kai's win conditions involve Ancestral into Lotus here like some combination, because he needs the Ancestral to get actually cards in his hand because he doesn't have very many cards, and he needs Lotus so he can actually play something. That's the one downside of these like various Mentor Pyromancer type decks is they're not broken like a lot of the decks people think about when they think of Vintage, right? They're playing like 2 to 3 Moxen, and
Right.
you end up in a spot where if you don't draw Lotus, you can't actually have these like absurd turns. Oh, Rich is playing Pyroblast and Cabal Therapies. I'm curious who else he's playing then, because that's a lot of anti-blue stuff in the main deck.
Yeah, Rich serves with his tokens and the Baleful Strix. Strix is going to fly over. He offers Kai the ability to trade tokens.
Yeah, and the only downside of
trade
trading the last you could trade the last token off and the Pyromancer gets to attack, but it's kind of even either way.
He is so dead. Yep.
Yes.
Game 1 to Rich Shay. And now our first look at the full deck lists. Gotta look really quick. Squint.
Oh, it looks like Rich has got not a whole lot for the mirror, though he does advocate setting up Force of Will. Kai playing nearly mono white sideboard.
Yeah, that is
these decks I would expect. Yeah. I would expect
only the one Baleful Strix in the main for Rich.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect
either of these decks to sideboard a lot in the mirror because you're already kind of pre-boarded. Basically, you need cards to take out for when you take out your Mental Missteps and Flusterstorms and whatnot against the decks where those aren't good. And that fills up, and cards against like Dredge, for example, that fills up so much your sideboard that at most you're boarding in like 2 to 3 cards or something.
I gotta think the Sulfur Elemental comes in. Rich Shay has not moved it into his deck yet, but
I mean he saw Pyromancer, but I think he's gonna put Kai on play. Yeah, he's gonna put Kai on playing the same deck. You know,
if it wasn't for the Swords to Plowshares, Kai didn't show him any white mana, but he saw Swords to Plowshares. There's got to be mentors.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing where I actually played 2 main deck Sulfur Elementals in my first week here. I'm kind of not impressed with it against Mentor. The problem is it's a sideboard card which kills off the tokens, but doesn't actually kill the Mentor. And if they kill your Sulfur Elemental, you still have to deal with this Mentor. I don't know. Yeah. It's fine, but it's not a silver bullet, you know.
Fair enough. Yeah, like you said, not a lot of sideboard tech for this matchup. These guys have their main decks loaded with Missteps and Flusterstorms, and those are the kinds of things you want here. Kai's got to be advantaged for having swords, right?
Swords is
ability to.
Swords is good. Snuff Out's probably a little better because your mana base isn't really getting messed with. That's one of the disadvantages of Snuff Out is that it's a black card and you don't want your black spells to be your removal against the decks with Wastelands. But since there's no Wastelands here, Snuff Out I think is generally better than Swords. You can't get misstepped and it costs 0 instead of 1. But you also can't play 4 Snuff Outs or 3 Snuff Outs. So
yeah, I saw 2 in the main. I think that was it.
So Rich draws Jace, but he also draws 2 of his Moxen. So he's actually got a pretty fast Jace here. I've been cutting Jace recently because it's just so expensive. But when you draw multiple Moxens, Jace is really good. It gets Pyroblasted, but if it resolves, it puts you up by a significant amount of cards.
I like 1 Jace. I mean, sometimes you have to bounce an Oath of Druid's creature, right?
I don't have a problem with 1 Jace at all. I mean, it's a good card. I end up, when I play this deck, not playing tons, but...
Yeah, it is expensive, you're right. But I mean, the deck also has Demonic Tutor. Like, sometimes it's just perfect.
Kai's hand is borderline here. If he didn't have the Misstep, I think it'd be a pretty easy mulligan. But with the Misstep, I kind of like this hand. Like, you can protect your Preordained, and then once you find a second land, you get to Gush, and you've got Swords for an early removal spell, so...
He agrees with you?
Players are going to trade Missteps here, presumably?
Presumably.
Oh, wow. Rich did not misstep in Kaiju Basic Island, which is kind of awkward. You don't really want Basic Island. You certainly don't want Mentor, but yeah, it looks like Kai actually just shipped the island. Preordained's probably just better here.
Oh, is Rich going to strip?
Oh, yeah, he has Gataxian Probe. So
he probes, right!
If Kai doesn't misstep here, which I don't think Kai should under most circumstances,
agreed.
Rich is gonna see that Kai's on just 1 land, and then he's just gonna use strip one here. Wow, this could be a short game.
Bye, Kai.
Oh wow, Rich drew preordain too, so now he can preordain before making this decision. Gotta say, Rich has the games have gone smoothly on Rich's side. He has not been troubled by the kind of draws Kai's been troubled by.
Yeah,
Like
the boxes are so good in his deck.
Yeah, both games Kai has been kind of like struggled to put together like a reasonable draw, and
Yep.
Rich has just had like great counters to it. Probe into Strip Mine is a nice touch.
Yeah, I mean, one lane preordain is just the deck is built to be able to keep one lane preordain hands. That's part of its power, actually, is that it doesn't. It gets to have all of these cards that do things because it has so little mana. So it does also mean that God, when you draw the Sapphire, it's so good. Thoughtseize, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's a sideboard card. I like it. I like Jace. It is funny though that Jace actually conflicts with Jace. Like Rich,
You
has
can only
two
have
Jaces.
one. You
Yeah.
have to bottom Prince Prodigy. We got grown up Big Daddy Jace. He's gonna put it on top.
Well, you get to play it this turn because of the second Mox, which is kind of
You
nice.
get to play Mind Sculptor next turn.
Yeah. I wonder if Rich is gonna like. Oh, he chose to bin the Thoughtseize because Kai just has all spells. Yeah, so Kai's gonna have to discard here.
Kai did draw a Force of Will, so Mind Sculptor is no longer guaranteed to come down here.
Rich can also leave Jace Prince Prodigy in play, can have both in play, but now he can't use the Jace, so it's kind of
right. As soon as
I don't really know what you get off. Actually, well, it's a good backup plan, is what it is, because now that Kai is forcing this Mind Sculptor, it means that Rich is not he's not out of gas. He's got Jace Prince Prodigy here, so that kind of makes sense.
Fair. I think Kai has to force the Mind Sculptor, though.
Oh yeah, I mean you can't.
do you activate Prince Prodigy?
Kai's got the concede menu up.
He's waiting for a Force of Will. That's funny. He does activate Prince Prodigy. Wants the loot. Presumably he would have Force of Willed and just gotten to pick a Jace, but...
Yeah. Like, even if Kai draws a land here, the mental missteps are going to take out Kai's first couple plays. I guess Kai can, if Kai draws land, and their fetches, he can cast Dig Through Time, but yeah, this isn't going well.
It's not like Rich has anything super exciting to flash back with Telepath.
No, but he has a
Preordain good enough. Yeah.
And then you can actually just lose the Jace and play another Preordain. There's no way Rich doesn't win off of 2 Preordains plus 2 draw steps versus Kai. Kai's not a favorite to like resolve another spell this game. Like, if Kai draws a land, he plays a Brainstorm and Rich missteps it. And then Kai draws another land. Oh, there's a Treasure Cruise, which is kind of interesting. You might want to just, like, cast it for 2 mana, which you don't often do, just to leave a Preordain in the graveyard.
Yeah.
You could also flashback Preordain first. Maybe you find a Gush or something, but...
Yep, he's done it exactly the way you suggested. Black Lotus, Brainstorm, Cabal Therapy. So he knows Kai's hand. He can hit with a Cabal Therapy.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing about that is, so Kai's going to misstep one of these cards. It doesn't matter. Kai's misstep's trading for Rich's misstep. And then Rich can Cabal Therapy, but even hitting double plow doesn't actually do anything. Oh yeah, this is
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, Rich still has to like sequence his spells and all that, but
Right.
I don't think Rich is in any danger of losing this game.
Agreed. He does have to actually find a creature eventually, but that always happens.
Does he? He can just cast like 3 ancestrals and Kai's got a lot of fortitude here. I would have probably been on to, on to whatever. Whatever he has going on next.
It's a race between Rich finding a creature and Kai giving up and conceding. I see. Probably did have to find a creature really quickly to win that race.
Yeah. Now the Cabal Therapy on Swords, and then flashback Cabal Therapy on Brainstorm. And then Kai's best draw is like Lotus, Dig Through Time. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well.
There you go. Dr. the Atog Lord, Rich Shay. Surprised your expectations a little bit. He did not run back a workshop deck. He's playing one of the blue decks that you get to see him stream with. These are clearly the decks he enjoys playing. And I mean, Grixis Pyromancer is in a pretty good spot in Vintage right now. I went 2-1 with it. Rich is now 1-0 with it. So we can look at the schedule and see that's a big win for Rich. He was in the big first place tie at 4-2. There were what, 4 of you guys tied at 4-2? And now Rich moves to 5-2, so he will be in first place at the end of tonight. Could still be a 4-way tie. We'll see how these matches play out. I'm rooting against that for the record. Kai at 3-4. Still, I guess mathematically in both races at this point, but I don't think
it's 3 and 4 slightly on the relegation side versus the playoff side, but
there's 4 playoff spots. So.
But it's close. So
yeah, I think X and 3 has always made the playoffs, and X and 4, 5 and 4 has sometimes made the playoffs. Is how that usually shakes out. So pretty interesting first match. Couple of blue decks doing what blue decks do. One of them did. Yeah, one of them showing off what the blue decks can do. That's what I was going for. All right. Well, it's been fun having you back, Luis. You want to say anything before you go down and play one?
No. I will say that if I lose, it's because I'm sleep deprived. Even though I feel fine, but if I do,
can I still use that excuse 11 years later? Because
but
I've made some mistakes this season. That's for sure. Fair enough. All right, I like it. Sleep deprived Luis Scott Vargas coming right up after this break. Stay tuned, guys.